Namaskar. A warm welcome to World News and Indian Perspective on All India Radio. This is Prashant Kumar Sinha and with me is Anita Anand, bringing glimpses of major developments of the day from across the globe. Over the next half an hour, we shall bring you the latest from the world of politics, economy, sports, entertainment, and more. The headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asserts that India will overcome the coronavirus pandemic. United States ends mandatory mask requirement for fully vaccinated people. COVID-19 recovery rate in India improves to 83.50%. Over 3,43,000 new cases reported. India expresses concern over soaring prices of medical supplies being procured from Chinese manufacturers by private Indian traders. Nepal President Vidya Devi Bhandari reappoints KP Sharma Oli as Prime Minister, and India retains number one position in ICC Test rankings. As the number of COVID cases are on the rise, we appeal to our listeners not to lower the guard, follow all precautions, and all those above 45 years of age who have taken the first dose of COVID-19 vaccine to get vaccinated with second dose at the scheduled time. Stay safe and protected by following these three simple steps. Wear a face mask, maintain 2 gaz ki doori for social distancing, and focus on hand and face hygiene. Now the news. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has assured that the country will overcome the challenge of the coronavirus pandemic with strength and dedication. Speaking at a virtual event after releasing the 8th installment of financial benefit under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi, the Prime Minister asserted that India is not a nation that will lose hope in tough times. Mr. Modi requested everyone to register themselves for vaccination and urged to strictly adhere to the COVID-appropriate behavior at all times, informing that nearly 18 crore vaccine doses have been administered so far in the country. He affirmed that the country, along with state governments, is continuously working towards ensuring quick and easy availability of COVID vaccines to every eligible beneficiary. Urging people to wear masks properly, Mr. Modi asked everyone to consult a doctor when they witness any COVID-related symptom, assuring everyone about the government's resolve towards fighting COVID-19 with all its might. The Prime Minister said that he shares the feelings of countrymen at every loss of life reported in the country. Meanwhile, India has crossed a major landmark by administering more than 18 crore COVID-19 vaccine doses in the country so far. These include over 96,27,000 healthcare workers who have taken the first dose and more than 66 lakh healthcare workers who have taken the second dose, over 1 crore 43 lakh frontline workers who have taken the first dose, and more than 81 lakh frontline workers who have taken the second dose. The Union Health Ministry said that more than 10,79,000 beneficiaries were inoculated with COVID-19 vaccine doses till 8 p.m. today. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Thursday interacted with the U.S. Global Task Force on Pandemic Relief. He appreciated the participation of the CEOs with their support for India's current efforts. Dr. Jaishankar discussed the priorities of oxygen, vaccines, pharmaceuticals, and the importance of effective supply chains. He underlined the global implications of a stronger India-U.S. health collaboration. Dr. Jaishankar said the meeting was an affirmation of the exceptional relationship. The External Affairs Minister said he deeply values the sentiments expressed.
Government on Friday said that the inflow of foreign aid to combat COVID continued to be swiftly cleared, apportioned and sent to states and union territories. Union Health Ministry said more than 10,000 oxygen concentrators, over 12,000 oxygen cylinders, 19 oxygen generation plants, 6,497 ventilators and over 4 lakh remdesivir vials were delivered and dispatched through road and air from 27th of April to 13th of May this year. The ministry said through a streamlined and systematic mechanism, various ministries and departments of government have seamlessly collaborated for expeditiously delivering the incoming global aid to states and union territories. Sweden's ambassador to India, Claes Molin, has said that his country is working closely with partners in India to get an understanding of what is required on ground to deal with the surge in COVID-19 cases, and it is heartening to see so many people stepping up to the challenge. A release said that Team Sweden, which comprises Swedish government, Swedish industry, businesses and agencies, have joined forces to help India fight the current COVID-19 surge. Swedish companies are involved in strengthening and assisting local healthcare systems via support to local hospitals with medical equipment like ventilators, oxygen concentrators, setting up of COVID care facilities, infrastructure and technical know-how. Sweden has also donated 200 oxygen concentrators to India. It supports the Indian Red Cross through IFCR, International Federation of Red Cross. Now let's take a look at the coronavirus updates from around the world. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention CDC on Thursday advised that fully vaccinated people do not need to wear masks outdoors and can avoid wearing them indoors in most places. President Joe Biden remarked that anyone who is fully vaccinated can participate in indoor and outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physical distancing. Mr. Biden hailed the development as a moment when people can get back to some sense of normalcy. The decision was taken based on the continuing downward trajectory of cases, the scientific data on the performance of vaccines, and the understanding of how the virus spreads. Japan is declaring a state of emergency in 3 more prefectures hit hard by COVID-19 pandemic. Economy Minister Yasutoshi Nishimura, who is also in charge of virus countermeasures, said on Friday that Hokkaido, Okayama and Hiroshima will join Tokyo, Osaka and 4 other prefectures on Sunday under a state of emergency till 31st of May. The state of emergency in Tokyo and elsewhere would run through this month. A travel bubble between Hong Kong and Singapore set to open on May 26 has a high chance of being postponed, as stated by Hong Kong officials on Friday. Earlier, it was slated to begin in November but was suspended after a spike in cases in Hong Kong. The first flight for stranded Australians from India will arrive in Australia tomorrow with up to 150 citizens and permanent residents. The flight will be the first after the lifting of a 2-week ban on anyone coming from India, including Australian citizens, aimed at keeping out a fast-spreading variant of the novel coronavirus. A military plane left Australia today taking aid to India, according to reports. The plane will return with stranded citizens who must all test negative for COVID-19 before boarding. Upon reaching, they will be heading for 2 weeks of quarantine. There are about 9,000 Australian citizens and permanent residents in India hoping to get home. Topmost global biologists have called for new investigations to ascertain all possible origins of coronavirus. In a letter published in the international journal Science, Stanford University microbiologist David Relman and the University of Washington virologist Jesse Bloom, with 16 other reputed biologists, have called on China's laboratories and agencies to open their records for an independent analysis. The scientists have said that hypotheses about both natural and laboratory spillovers of the virus must be taken seriously until sufficient data is available to suggest otherwise. This is All India Radio giving you the world news.
3 steps to stay protected and stay safe from COVID-19. Wear face mask, 2 gaz ki duri to maintain social distancing, maintain hand and face hygiene.
Listeners, welcome back. India has expressed concern over the soaring prices of medical supplies like oxygen concentrators and other essential medical supplies being procured from Chinese manufacturers by private Indian traders to deal with the COVID-19 surge in the country. India's Consul General to Hong Kong, Priyanka Chauhan, called upon China to help stop the sharp increase in prices of such essential medical items and to restore the normal frequency of cargo flight services to maintain a steady supply chain, as these are slowing arrivals of medical goods to India. Ms. Chauhan said in an interview with a Hong Kong-based newspaper that our expectation at this point is that the supply chain should remain open and product prices should remain stable. Pointing out the lack of government-level support from China, Ms. Chauhan said there has to be a sense of governmental-level support and efforts on the need for more government-level cooperation between India and China during the pandemic for more guarantee on price stability and supply chain. Chauhan said that India would be open to discussing the issue to see if a better mechanism could be agreed. China's efforts have been largely confined to private companies and donations from the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies, while other nations have pledged government help. More from our Beijing correspondent.
Comments from India's envoy in Hong Kong came in the backdrop of efforts by private Indian traders to source much-needed medical supplies, especially oxygen concentrators from China, to fight the second wave of COVID-19 amid nearly quadrupled prices and a disrupted cargo operation from China to India. Importers from India are also lamenting the delays in delivery of supplies despite full payment in advance at a higher price. Observers say that in absence of any sort of government-level efforts, Chinese businesses have hiked the prices unreasonably, giving reasons of high demand and lack of raw material, which may not be completely true. In this regard, Indian envoy said, even if there is a little bit of supply-demand pressure, there has to be some stability and predictability in product prices. A phone conversation between foreign ministers of India and China in April had helped with the clearance and approval of cargo flights, but they had not returned to the same frequency as before the second wave. She suggested that higher-level assurances of officials for flight clearances could help. Anshman Mishra for World News, All India Radio, Beijing.
Meanwhile, China on Friday said that price surge in medical products procured by Indian traders for COVID-19 management is due to prevailing demand-supply mismatch and market factors, as they had to import raw material to meet the excess demand from India. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Hua Chunying said that China agrees with India's envoy in Hong Kong, Priyanka Chauhan, calling for a stable and open supply chain, but she did not give any assurance on increasing the frequency of cargo flights to India to the level before the second wave. Responding to a question from Prasad Bharati on this, Ms. Hua said that China has been encouraging its companies to meet India's procurement to meet the country's surge in coronavirus cases. The Indian side has also raised their demand through different channels, which has led to excessive demand in the market and driven up prices because the Chinese manufacturers have to import some of the raw materials from other countries, she said. About Indian envoy's call for increasing cargo flights, the Chinese spokesperson did not give a direct reply but expressed Beijing's commitment to keep the industrial supply chains open. Soaring prices of medical supplies like oxygen concentrators and disruption of cargo flights to India are slowing arrivals of medical goods, Ms. Chauhan said this week.
In Nepal, President Vidya Devi Bhandari has reappointed K.P. Sharma Oli as Prime Minister as the opposition parties failed to put together a coalition government by the 9 p.m. deadline yesterday. Oli will take the oath of office on Friday. He had lost a trust vote in the House of Representatives on Monday. He will have 30 days to prove that he has majority support in the House. The main contender to the PM post, Sher Bahadur Deuba, who is the chief of the main opposition Nepali Congress, had informed his allies shortly ahead of the deadline that he would not be able to put together a coalition government with a majority in the House. The formal withdrawal by Sher Bahadur Deuba left no other option for the president but to invite Oli to form the government again. In today's hotspot section, we take a closer look at the developments in Nepal.
Mr. Aneja, how do you see the political developments in Nepal? This is quite significant, actually, in fact, that Prime Minister Oli has lost trust vote in the Nepalese parliament, bringing fresh instability and political chaos in Kathmandu at a time when the country is facing increasing cases of coronavirus. How do you see the overall development in Nepal?
I think it's extremely unfortunate that at a time of a medical crisis of the dimensions of COVID-19, that you have political instability entering Nepal, that we're going to have a phase of prolonged transition right now in Nepal. And there are pressing concerns both domestically towards India as well as towards China. So this is a phase where also many geopolitical equations will come into the picture.
You've definitely mentioned China's efforts to expand its influence in Nepal. In the last 6 months, we have seen, in fact, China's direct involvement in Nepal's internal politics. China tried to just patch up between the two factions in Nepalese Communist Party, one led by Mr. Oli and other led by Mr. Prachanda. So how do you see China's renewed interest in Nepal and its effort to expand its influence over Kathmandu at a time when India's relations with Nepal was going really strong? Mr. Oli has always been perceived to be someone who is close to Beijing. So how do you see the overall developments in Nepal impacting India's strategic interest in overall development of Nepal. Please elaborate what kind of role China is playing in destabilizing Nepal and the implications for India.
My own view of Prime Minister Oli is not that he is or the communists themselves are necessarily pro-China. I think they are pro-Nepal, and there is a strong sense of Nepali nationalism which we in India should not undermine. Coming to China's outlook and its moves inside Nepal, obviously there are deep geopolitical interests of the Chinese. And you can see that the Chinese want to structurally link Nepal with Tibet and thereafter with the Chinese main. I'll just elaborate this point a little. There's a Chinese railway which goes to Tibet and comes to a place called Shigatse, which is close to the border with Nepal. Now the Chinese want to extend that railway from Shigatse to Kathmandu. And this is the dream project right from Maoist times. And if that happens, then actually your Kathmandu gets interlinked with the Chinese transportation system and in a way becomes part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. So this is one move which the Chinese are doing of structurally linking. There are certain ports in China which have been designated for use by Nepal. So the idea of the Chinese is very clear. A, to structurally integrate Nepal, and B, to undermine India's influence in Nepal. There's a very clear-cut goals which the Chinese are doing. Third thing which strikes me is the diplomatic role being played. I would say quote-unquote diplomatic. The role being played by their ambassador, Ms. Ho Yanqi. And she has been going far beyond a diplomatic brief, but openly trying to meddle in Nepal's internal politics. So it's been quite shocking to see diplomat playing that kind of a role. But that also shows the desperation of the Chinese to draw Nepal into their orbit of influence. So I think there's another element which comes to the picture. One is that if you see the tensions between India and China in Ladakh, I think the Chinese are also looking at one more theater, which is the tri-junction between India, Nepal, and China, specifically around the Lipu Lake Pass. So there's a security dimension also which comes in from the Chinese side. So I think a nationalist in Nepal and we in India have to be very careful about the Chinese moves. Now we have the political crisis coming up. So what happens, the outcome of this crisis is, I think, going to have a lot of implications, not just domestically for the Nepalese, but for the region, and especially will have a major impact on how Nepal equates with China and India.
How do you see the role being played by Mr. Prachanda, Pushpakumar Dahal? So his friction with Mr. Oli has led to this crisis. And Prachanda is known to be a very influential leader actually, and he had led that armed movement in Nepal. So what kind of role you see for Prachanda in Nepal's political landscape? And what is his influence and what kind of role that he is expected to play in the next few months?
I think Prachanda is definitely a very influential leader and has been traditionally been so. He was Oli's partner in the Nepal Communist Party, the new party which was formed, united two separate factions of the Communist Party. But I do see that his influence may have been exaggerated because despite he being a heavyweight, he doesn't have enough clout, and that's been shown over the last few months, to carry enough members of parliament or within the Communist Party with him. You also have players like Madhav Nepal, who are major players, have in the last, this vote of no confidence which we had, have abstained. So then definitely hedging their bets as well. So it's not clear whether Prachanda is going to have influence over these heavyweights as well. So I think his limitations of influence have been exposed, and that's one of the reasons why there is this instability which has come into Nepal. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon. As I said, we are probably in the end will be heading towards elections because as of now, none of these heavyweights like Prachanda or Oli or Madhav Nepal or the Nepali Congress has sufficient numbers behind them to emerge as a leader.
So in fact, earlier this year we have seen this diplomatic row between India and Nepal over the new map that Nepal had unveiled after India inaugurated a very key border road in Uttarakhand. So how do you see this development? In fact, did the incident significantly damage our ties, or has it been repaired after high-level visits both from India to Kathmandu and Kathmandu to India in the last few months? So do you see China gaining ground in Kathmandu because of this lingering dispute between India and Nepal? over certain areas in Uttarakhand. So do you see any kind of significant damage that the incident may have resulted in our ties?
Initially, we thought that India has lost, but I think what is very important is that you have to look at the internal dynamics of Nepal. And Oli at that point in time had played his nationalist card. And in order to do that, this whole thing about cartographic, quote unquote, adjustments, in the sense of including territories which are clearly with India as shown on the new map of Nepal. As I say it, I think in India we saw it as an attempt to raise a nationalist bogey for political goals rather than necessarily anti-India move in the long run. And as you said, I think there's been a lot of damage control. In fact, I think we have arrested the damage with a string of visits which started from last October, which also led to the visit of the army chief. The military to military track remained very strong. And then we had the Nepal foreign minister coming to India, Pradeep Gyawali. And I think there was a good understanding finally between India and Nepal on this issue. But of course, it is an issue which still has to be resolved. And I think we will revisit that. We've had the meetings between India and Nepalese on this particular subject and the new cartographic alignments which Nepal has tried. I think right now India is interested more in the bigger picture of having a stable and a pro-India or at least a neutral government in Nepal. And once that is established, then we revisit this issue, which right now is on the back burner, but will come up at some point in time after there is greater political stability in Nepal.
And how do you see the role of the Madhesi parties, in fact, which were traditionally very, very pro-India? They were originally from India. So how do you see their role in the current political matrix?
I think they'll play a significant role, there is no doubt. But I think this is a bit of a misnomer that, they are the pro-India, they are the loyalist Indians, and others are not. I think it's time we realize that the Nepalese and all Nepalese have benefited from a fantastic relationship between India and Nepal. I mean, look at the Gorkha troops in the Indian military. And that is people who are not Madhesis, who are central to India's national security. So I think India's relationship goes beyond just the people in the Terai area, though they are closer to the state of Bihar, etc. So you do have a cross-border connection which is strong. But I think that particular situation has been overcome long ago, that India has a special relationship with all the ethnic communities inside Nepal. Because of the kind of special relationship we have had with Nepal in terms of open borders, Nepalese coming and working in India, intercultural ties. So there are many, many more factors than territorial proximity which bind India and Nepal. I was in China for 5 years as a correspondent earlier, and I could see what the Chinese were most miffed about was a special cultural relationship between India and Nepal, which is centuries old. And that is something which cannot be replicated on the altar of expediency of geopolitics. And the Chinese know that. So there is a very, very strong cultural connect between India and Nepal. And I think that goes across ethnic lines in Nepal.
So definitely, in fact, you spoke about this very, very decades-old relationship between India and Nepal, and which was reflected in the 1950 India-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship. And we share nearly 1,900 kilometers long border, which is mostly open border. But still, in fact, Nepalese political parties have been seeking a review of the India-Nepal Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1950. So how do you see it in the context of fast-changing political developments in Nepal?
I think this is a great point, because you see, what India has to adapt really is to understand that Nepal of today is in a globalized world, is a far different Nepal than what it was in the 50s or when the treaty was signed. So I think we got to understand that a new generation of Nepalese has come in, and they are the ones who are exposed to the rest of the world. Their elite is changing its character. Many have studied in universities abroad. So, their level of awareness of events in and out of the region is substantial and has changed completely. So I think we need to strike a new generational bond with the Nepalese. And I think even when it comes to Nepalese benefiting from India, they would be wanting to get into more into MBAs and getting into a private sector rather than the traditional occupations of military and otherwise. I think both sides have to readjust to each other. I should make this point that from an Indian perspective, I think it's very important that we do not give them a feeling of a big brother. I think it's very important that we speak to the Nepalese in a language which is equal and which is respectful. I think that will go a long way in winning hearts and minds in Nepal.
How do you see Nepal in the next few months? In fact, I mean, are you going to see a stable Nepal or political uncertainty will continue? As a close Nepal watcher, how do you see Nepal in the next few months and years in its political journey?
Yeah, I think the next few months it's going to be unstable. There's no question about it. As I said, we'll probably be heading in the next 3 months or so for a general election. And after that, I don't see any reason necessarily that's going to be unstable. I think finally the people of Nepal will have to make up their mind whether they want to continue with the voting pattern they've been pursuing right now or go for a radical change. I think that's the real clincher would come internally in Nepal. And I see no reasons why we will have this instability ended after we have the next general elections. Because people like Oli and all are very seasoned politicians. They are also watching what changes are required. Frankly, I'm cautiously optimistic about Nepal's future and the relationship of Nepal and India.
Thank you, Mr. Aneja, for your detailed overview and your perspective about the latest political developments in Nepal. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
A 6.6 magnitude earthquake struck off the west coast of Indonesia, Sumatra, on Friday. The shallow quake hit at 6:30 GMT near the island of Nias, about 250 kilometers south of the city of Sinabang. Nias Search and Rescue Agency spokesperson August Wibisono said so far there had been no reports of damage or casualties.
An explosion inside a mosque on the outskirts of the Afghan capital Kabul killed at least 12 people on Friday. Firdos Faramarz, spokesperson for the Kabul police, said the mosque's imam was among the 12 dead and that at least 15 people were wounded in the blast at a mosque in the capital's Shakardara area. A plan to drastically reduce car traffic in the center of the French capital Paris by 2022 has been put forward by the city council. The scheme would ban through traffic in 4 central districts, giving priority instead to cyclists, pedestrians and public transport.
Moving on to sports, India has retained its position as number 1 test side after the annual update of the ICC team rankings released on Friday. India had the table with the ratings of 121, having accumulated 2,914 points from 24 matches. In tennis, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic reached quarterfinals of the Italian Open in Rome on Thursday.
Eid ul-Fitr is being celebrated with simplicity and solemnity across the country today amidst coronavirus pandemic. There will be no mass congregations at Eidgahs and grand mosques in compliance with COVID guidelines.
And now let us take a look at the major developments around the world as reported in the foreign press. Washington Post writes that House Democrats and Republicans reached deal on establishing a commission to investigate deadly January 6 attack on the Capitol. New York Times reports that New York has seen a major rise in gun violence after years of declining violent crime rates. Telegraph writes that suicide rise in Thailand as COVID decimates its tourism industry. Khaleej Times reports that schools in UAE await reply to the request made to CBSE to allow the examinations to be held. And South China Morning Post reports that Pope Francis is worried about cost of child rearing after Italy's birth rate sinks.
And now a quick look at the headlines once again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi asserts that India will overcome the coronavirus pandemic. United States ends mandatory mask requirement for fully vaccinated people. COVID-19 recovery rate in India improves to 83.50%. Over 343,000 new cases reported. India expresses concern over soaring prices of medical supplies being procured from Chinese manufacturers by private Indian traders. Nepal President Bidya Devi Bhandari reappoints KP Sharma Oli as Prime Minister, and India retains number 1 position in ICC Test rankings. India 151st birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. Before we end, let's listen to his favorite bhajan Vaishnav Jan by artists from Brazil.
Vaishnava Janato Tene Kaije Piji Parai Janire Pare Duke Upakare Karetoye Manabimana.
And with that, we end this bulletin. We'll be back at the same time tomorrow with the next edition of World News.